Have you ever caught yourself thinking the same thoughts over and over again, waking up with worry, feeling stuck, or even questioning, is this really the life I'm meant to be living? Because here's the truth that most people don't realize. Your body may be doing everything it can to keep you going, but your mind could be quietly keeping you stuck. Welcome back to the show. I'm Dr. Evan Leopold, an integrative naturopathic doctor here in Washington, and I help women, especially in midlife, navigate hormone changes, energy shifts, and everything that comes with trying to feel like yourself again in a body and a life that's constantly evolving. And today's conversation is one that goes deeper, beyond labs, beyond symptoms, into something we don't talk enough about the patterns, the thoughts, and the internal stories that shape how we feel every single day. I am joined by Shoshana Leopold, an educator at heart and a transformational coach who helps people break free from the mental loop, old habits, and emotional patterns that keep them from feeling successful, fulfilled, and truly at peace. What makes this conversation powerful is that Shoshana doesn't just teach this work, she lives it from navigating stress, anxiety, and strained relationships to completely transforming the way she thinks, feels, and shows up in her life, and now guiding others to do the same. So if you ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but something still feels off mentally, emotionally, and even physically, this episode is going to connect some dots for you. So let's dive in. So let's start with your story, Shoshana. Let's just take it back. What was life before this work look like for you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Evelyn. You gave such a beautiful introduction, and I feel very at home. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's a thrill to be here. My early life was quite easy in the sense that I was born in a very well off family. I had the advantage of I had many advantages, including lots of education.
Mm.
At the same time, as a girl growing up in the 50s and 60s, there were some issues for me that I later on in life was able to heal with the work that I do. Self-confidence and anxiety, for example. Anxiety was a big one. At the same time, my family's cultural background and religious background was very much wrapped up in working towards freedom and liberation. So that was a thread for me that looking back at it now, I can really see has run through my life.
Ah.
Fast forward a little, and the reason I say that is because I'm really committed and passionate about helping people find freedom of thought and freedom of emotion, because that is the way we can live our highest life and bring the
Yeah.
best of ourselves and create the best world around us, and therefore have a big impact on the world.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a teen and young adult, I continued with lots of anxiety. And around my late teens, I began really seriously looking at what I could do to somehow heal this issue. Um, I tried a bunch of things, starting
Mm.
with community organizing, which it was the 60s, so we were all interested in creating great, great um, freedom in the world. Civil rights was big for us at that time, and
Mhm.
so I was involved in community organizing for a lot of years. That was great in helping people get along and raising excuse me, I'm just gonna turn off my phone. Forgive me, everybody. I just realized I left it on. It was great for the community, but I still
Mm.
felt that something was going on, that there was a better way. So then I turned to psychotherapy. Education was a theme in my life. I did lots of learning. I
Um,
was not so happy with the solutions I found there, so I went into
mm.
holistic health, did a deep dive into homeopathy, and
Yeah.
reflexology. I also tried to nurture my spirit and with some religious life, and all of
Mhm.
those things supported me, but none of them really got to the basis of what I was trying to get to. There was no underlying change, so I kept coming back to the same issues. A little support here, a little change there, but the underlying issue was still there. An example of how this affected my life, I had an amazing job in education and did well in it. But then things started to crumble a little bit. I tried different jobs, didn't do so well. I never could fit into bureaucracy anyway. But the
Mm.
anxiety and also depression and generally feeling anchorless did lose me some jobs and
Oh.
also made it so I didn't want to. I felt like I was a round hole, round peg in a square hole, things like that. So it really affected my work life. I lost clients.
Mm.
Fast forward, when I had a business, I lost clients. Sometimes my family and friends really wanted to avoid me because I wasn't so pleasant to be with, and I had considerable amount of anger.
Mm.
Um, then then I found the system that I now work with. It's called the Invincible Heart Traditions. The creator and founder of that is Adelaide Statile, who is an amazing, amazing healer and shaman and knows so much about the health of the brain that she brings it to this world in the form of this work. The big
Mm.
switch for me was when I discovered the Invincible Heart Traditions. I learned
Oh.
I was not a victim to the thoughts, the patterns, the emotions which had been running my life. So you said something before about repeating that same old story. It's like,
Yeah.
for people who remember what audio tapes are, it goes around and around playing on the same loop, and that I'll get to that a little bit more, but we don't when we repeat the same thoughts and have a pattern that we don't break free of, we just create
Uh-huh.
more of that.
Yeah.
Uh, but when I learned that I was not a victim to these patterns, I started to know that I could break out of those patterns. Now now here I was, well, breaking out of those patterns is for some people is easy. Once they're aware of it, they break out. But it's my understanding that for many people, A, they have to be aware of patterns, and that awareness isn't always there. B, they have to know what to do to change their thoughts. And I'll get more
Yeah.
specific in a little bit, but even if you want to think positively in the power of positive thinking, you got to know how to do that. And that's why I love this work and love working from on my own personally as well as with the coaches.
That's
So
amazing that it is a evolution of how you turn from back in the teenager time with the anxiety to the time of having your own solution. And I would imagine the story assembles so much in the nowadays society when children, teenager, after COVID, everything changed. The way that they do schooling, the way all the higher education do schooling completely different that people were not prepared how to do things. And we have more of those screening where it's not face to face or heart to heart conversation and affect a lot of our young generation. So the anxiety pattern is continue to rise. The mental health illness continue to rise. Now let's step back a little bit. What was the time or the moment you realized something has to change? Because like when you talk about teenager, you can live under parental supervision, and sometimes the household can have stress. And as a teenager, as a young adult, you may not have the control over other people or authority changing their pattern. The only thing you can change is yourself. However, if that bombardment come to you, then you have to wait until you get out of house
right.
to really have the freedom of doing things. And until you get out of the house, then where is a new next step to find to go there
Mhm.
for your moment?
There are
Yeah.
2 moments that I think of. One is when I was presenting I worked at, a place called the Horticultural Society of New York, and I was presenting a class, and I
Oh.
was so wound up. I knew I would be fine when I gave it, but I was so wound up that my colleague mentioned and asked me he made mention of this stress that I was undergoing, and he asked me how the heck I was gonna perform and
Mhm.
present. And that really gave me pause for thought because how much anxiety can one person carry around and how does it affect other people? And
That's a
then,
great
um,
question.
and then, and just before, well, a few years before that, where actually maybe it was at around the same time, I realized that I wasn't holding my own with the community organizing that I was doing, that I was um, not in my own thinking and following my own thinking and what I knew to be right. You know, the
I see.
particulars aren't important, but I realized that I had to step aside,
Mm.
not just follow along the way it
Yeah.
was going, but find out
Yeah.
for myself. And that's when I started to say, no, I'm not going to participate in this. It
Yeah.
sounds good, but it's no longer the way to it was actually about creating change, and
Mhm.
it wasn't happening. I felt that the community wasn't benefiting from it, and people weren't benefiting from it. So that's kind of generalized, but that's when I realized that I had to have the backbone that I needed to have. Yeah, that I needed to have the backbone. And I know you asked for one, but a third one comes to mind, so I hope you'll bear with
Ah,
me. This is when going from backbone to I can lead a joyous life. When my
the belief.
child was about 2 years old, I have
Mhm.
one delightful daughter, and when she was about 2 years old, I saw her being so happy, and I said to myself, "If I can raise a happy child, then I can learn to be happy." So, in
That's
short,
beautiful.
that may be the truly pivotal moment, which I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of, so thank you so much for helping me go back to that. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, and I truly enjoy the moment of having the baby or even like having children and seeing them because they just carry so much innocent joyous in their life. And sometimes I don't have to look back and say, we once was like that. Yeah, and even though right now I'm carrying a baby and I do feel the change in me that have to be mindful in a certain way, so therefore the connection between mom and baby will be also be in synchronizing between each other is a lot of mental. And I truly appreciate that you find your way to get out from the situation of the mind because nowadays the culture that we're living in is when teenager don't have any depression or anxiety going to see the primary care or any doctor would say can I what can I do about it? Either is a SSRI antidepressant or anti anxiolytic, or even going to any herbal, anything like that. Those are way to really trick the chemical pathway in the mind. But then we fix the physiology, but then the constant thought, it's not about that chemical. It's that consciousness that we're talking about and unconsciousness that we are aware of. And why do you think that most people stuck in these mental loops? Yeah,
I
in
think
your
for a
opinion.
few I want to reflect first on what you just said. We changed the biochemical pathways, but there's energetic pathways, there's neuro pathways, and this work literally will change the neural pathways and affect the energetic patterns, which and in a lot of ways, energy supersedes or is an umbrella for the chemical.
Mhm.
So that's, for people who are into studying the brain, it's really fun to know that you can change neural pathways. And many people are saying that in the scientific community. Now, would you repeat the second part of your question?
Oh, the question was why do people feel stuck in these mental loops? What do you
I
think?
think it's for a number of reasons. First of all, we are bombarded currently by and societal norms which are really reinforcing how tough life has to be and the difficulties of life. I say to my clients, don't listen to the news or listen to the news very carefully because if you listen to the news and you listen to commercials,
Yeah.
there's so much negativity out there. So that's coming at us. Schools don't Some schools have started to teach this. I have a colleague who
Hmm.
teaches this to little ones, but the schools also are it's often a doom and gloom perspective that we are hit by. I'm trying not to say, but I'm going to say, if you look at the commercials for medicine, is this okay to
Hmm.
say on
Go
um
ahead. Yeah.
you t-
Freedom of speech.
here's a medicine that's supposed to help with some condition. But by the way, look at all of the ways that it's going to destroy your life. Well, that's sending a message. It's sending a message that you really can't get better. Or if you get
Yeah.
better, you have to give up health in one area for another. And I think that's one example of being bombarded by negative thoughts.
Yeah.
There's also one that's aimed at people my age, says something like, yeah, if you were recording rock concerts, blah, 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 as a teenager, then you really have to get this checkup because you're likely to have this problem and this
Ah,
disease. So I just want to put out a shout out to not paying attention and being aware when we're hearing that and shutting off the radio, which is what
yeah.
I do. So that's one example. But I think another example, and in some ways more powerful, or maybe not more powerful, but equally powerful, is the fact that as we live and grow, excuse me, we get into the habit of talking about the negative thing.
Yeah.
We go out to coffee or as adults for a glass of wine, and we are talking about our lives. And it's so common and so accepted to just say, here's my story about this week. And I was going along and doing my garden, and look at all the ways things went wrong.
Hmm.
It's just very, very common to share the difficulties. So
Yeah.
that's another reason. And thirdly, we do it to ourselves. We've been taught whatever lessons we've been taught by our families. God bless everybody. Nobody wants to hurt people. And at the same time, they were raised with certain negative thoughts. So,
Hmm.
however, we incorporated the thinking of the people around us, of our families and our teachers, we are in patterns to
Oh,
say the same old negative thing. You're not as good as your sister, or
yeah.
you don't fit the image of a beautiful woman, or I mean, whatever difficulties. Now, the beauty is we don't have to stay there and we don't have to dwell there. So I want to
Yeah.
say that if there's only one message that gets out today from what I'm sharing, please know that we don't have to suffer with these.
Yeah.
Difficulties arise, but it is totally within our everyday abilities, totally within
Yeah.
our everyday abilities to change the thoughts and transform the thoughts so that we can live in joy and peace and success and
Yeah.
fulfillment, and the list goes on.
Yeah. It comes from what you thought, you think, what you are, what you eat, what you are. Like there are so many statements about that. And to reflect back to what you were talking about, the hypnotic rhythm. And then there's a book by Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. When I listen to that book, I wonder, oh my God, you are listening to the other side of your own mind. Like there is a cop, good angel, bad angel inside of your own mind, and have that conversation back and forth. And it's really real. It's happened inside there. Things happen in our head, and it can become a realistic when we continue to pour more energy and fuel into them. And I appreciate you talk about the empowerment that we have the capacity, the consciousness, the power to change that thought. Now, the question is, what are people doing wrong when they try to think positive, knowing they share difficulty, negative thing, reinforcement? But is there something different or not as productive when we try to think positive?
So when you just say try to think positive, the way that I envision it in my mind is, white knuckling it, like think positive, think positive. Now, I know that that's not the way all people do it. Some
Mm,
people really, I've spoken to them and they really have a way of
mm,
changing that thought.
mhm.
What I think though, what my experience was, and I guess I should admit this, is that the familiar negative thoughts, the panic attack thoughts, or the I'm worried about my presentation thoughts. I mean, really worried, not just a little worried but I mean, like get into a tailspin thoughts. They're familiar and they're comfortable. So
Yeah,
we have to get out of our regular pattern and what seems right because it's familiar
yeah.
and move out of that. Or people aren't even aware of it, which I think is often the case.
Mm,
So when we become aware of it, that's great, but there's just that gap in between. And maybe in your podcasts, I mean, I know that in your podcast, you're making people aware. So that's part of
yeah.
the journey. So what do we do when we're caught in the negative loop? That's where this work comes in. I'm not the
Yeah.
only one. I mean, I and the Invincible Heart traditions are not the only ways to get opportunity to change
Yeah.
or to create an opportunity to change. But it is a really effective way to do it. And the work is available. And, I encourage people to take a look at it. But I think for a lot of people, we need a system. We need a system
Mhm.
which has as immediate results as possible and
Yeah.
which encourages growth and movement from one point to another. So that's why, personally, I do this work. But
Yeah.
that's why I so strongly suggest that A, people consider a coach or a program, and B, vet it out. There are
Mhm.
many programs which are focused on the story. The
Mm.
story gets you more story. Is that clear, or should I say a little more about that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will ask one more question to connect with before we go into specific question about what you do. I would say that there is like a connect from physiology perspective, and I see how the thought pattern will show up in a cortisol dysregulation or hormone irregulation or even pattern reinforcement in the way they carry on their digestive tract and everything. And for my work and the audience in my site can also see those marker were changing and we can chase those marker all we can. We can take all the herbal and supplement, and those are the tools. Everything have tools. Chiropractor have tools to regulate the nervous system and spinal alignment. And I would say those yoga or even Tai Chi Qigong, everything have their way of working. And the main thing is a harmony in your body. And as much as we know our body, intuition, reflection of what we are going through, movement, activity, and how we feel. And that is taking that empowerment to go back into ourselves. What is a tool that would best work best in this situation for myself? Sometimes provider we're trained one way, like we're training one way, it may not fit that client for a certain time, but then the patient will know best. The client will know best. You mentioned about the tool about the tradition invincible heart tradition system. Can you walk us through what it actually looked like to work with you in with that situation when we want to change that thought pattern?
Yeah. We start with looking at the at one's whole life, what where are you and what is it that where would you like to be? What do you want to create? Where do you want to be in different categories of your life? So that
Mm,
sets us on a course for looking at what is it that's not happening. You want to be
mm,
here. You are here, you want to be over there and improve some situation. But what is it that's not allowing you to do that? And then we look at the awareness,
Mm.
not that we look at, we work with awareness, we work with identifying what's
Mhm.
holding us back. And then there are specific techniques that we use to change the course of the brain. And that's what I actually will, later on, we'll talk about it, but I'll offer people a session to experience that. And then we go
Mhm.
on to create the more advanced work, includes meditation, and language is very, very important. You said earlier, you didn't quite say it this way, but the idea that thoughts matter. Thoughts are
Mhm.
things, and a lot of people are saying that that's at the heart of the work that we do. Thoughts really matter. So it really matters that we can change the thoughts using language. And one of
Yeah.
using language which is about creating what we all want in our lives.
Yeah.
So I want to think of an example, but it's not coming to me. It will in a minute, but um well, even just how I said that, I wanna think of an example, but it's not coming to me. I could say,
Mm.
I'm thinking of an example and it'll come to me in a moment. And then I've bypassed the negative at all and told myself,
Ah.
"Let's create this now. Let's bring this to the surface of my thoughts right now."
Yeah.
So part of being coached, like I said before, when somebody looks for this kind of work, I so strongly suggest that it's not about retelling the story. Sometimes you have to tell the story, but don't
Yeah.
re-anchor it by telling it over and over again. Like that's a habit to really
Gotcha.
get out of. And having a coach, having a program
Mhm.
helps people with that. So
Yeah.
we could be aware that we're thinking negatively and we want to think positively. Having a system makes such a difference in manifesting that. And then having somebody who's trained to
Yep.
listen, you know, that's that really helps. And the progress a person can make is so
Yeah.
huge. And I have one client comes to mind who, when I said negative thinking, she was on board or healing negative thinking, she was on board. She said, I'm so tired of negative thinking. Fast
Mhm.
forward a number of weeks, she had to do a presentation. So she was
Mhm.
preparing a presentation for work. She has a pretty responsible position. And she said, I would never have had the nerve to craft it the way I did. It was all about what do
Yeah.
you wanna create? What are the positive things you want? She said, "It
Yeah.
because my thinking has changed, I can
Mm.
highlight what we want to have work in this particular situation. Have not as work, but we want what we want to be able to accomplish in the positive." And she
Yeah.
said, "It's making such a difference to how I present."
Yeah.
So,
It's a statement,
that
not
was
an
really fun.
anti-statement. Yeah.
Yeah, a
And
pro
to
statement. I love that.
right. And to bring the testimony that I had a section with you, and I remember that my mind would keep talking about the same trend of negative situation that I don't want it to happen. And I was very stressed about it or feeling anxious about it. And I remember you stopped me a lot of time to help me anchor in the positive thing that I want to create. And that anchor thing, meaning breathing, meaning like just deep breath and think about a positive or the very calm time, and it helped to slow things down. And I know in my 20s, and I'm pretty sure any young adult here, mine could like boom, 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 go very fast. And a lot of time in my previous place I work at, all the colleagues say, slow down, you think too fast, making more mistakes that way. And I just like, I ignore them. It's just who I am. I can be who I am. But now, as the years go by, wisdom come in and experience happen, and we learn to really slow down and take time to smell the roses that we talk about, or even slow our thought, because sometimes that thought can pass through, and if we don't catch them, we will just let them go and it will happen again. And that coach or that accountable partner, I would say my husband is a very disciplined, accountable partner where my thoughts come out, he say, "What did you just say?" It was funny. It could be a very interesting dynamic for the marriage pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it
Sometimes
worked well, it can
when
be
it works
fun.
well, it's great, and when it doesn't, get yourself code.
Yep, yep. Get that remediation somewhere and then go back to work with a relationship.
Beautiful that you can do that at home, that you have that support. Good for you.
Yeah, yeah. It's a um, never-ending progress, and I think Gottman Institute or the teaching from that aspect. I love psychologist Esther Perel. So a lot of people out there have do great work to encourage the awareness in different situation in different way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But then, the people who are doing this work, in addition to the Invincible Heart tradition, they're out there and people are becoming more and more aware. We say
Yeah,
that we do work in the quantum field, which is the field
yeah,
of all possibility. And we do. We don't just say it. I didn't mean it that way.
yeah.
But we describe it like that. And people, not just young people, but a lot of young people
Mm.
are their ears perk up when you use that kind of language.
And I appreciate that you provide a tool. And I would encourage people elsewhere as well that sometimes we have the fear that will this tool work for me? Will I have to go through times of many money and time to invest into this program? It doesn't work. I would say anything would have its place. And then for myself, for example, I have to explore what Qigong mean, what Tai Chi mean that I grew up somehow with my grandma, grandpa, and then now I have to go back and find out, oh, that's an energetic field and what acupuncture mean. And it does take time because each of these lane of thought, it takes years of development. It takes years of history, and somehow they can correlate together. And sometimes they have a very different perspective that if we curious open our mind, open our heart, have a curiosity to delve into a little bit, it will help us change the way that we think, change the way that we believe in. It is a beautiful thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
that's lovely.
di-
I love what you say about there are so many avenues of healing, just to put it in my words, and that maybe they don't integrate at first, but then you learn to integrate them, or maybe they're just different pathways towards the same goal. Yeah, I was a reflexologist and then got this training before I well, actually, I went from science education to reflexology, which was a great transition. Thank you very much. But then I had the opportunity to do this training, and it's really where my heart lies.
yeah. Well, thank you for that open heart and open mind to change career because that is a big jump for sure. Yeah. So now, if someone is waking up feeling anxious tomorrow morning, have tasks to do, have things, responsibility, or even have something past l- history recently that people do and doesn't work well with the life right now, what should they do first? What should
I
be the
say,
simple thing?
give me a call, and I'll teach them no
Yeah,
cost. I'll teach them what this work refers to as an intercession. I'll teach them a way to transform that thinking, and then if they work with me, we work into the future, meaning we look at the future and can actually prevent it from coming back. Um,
yeah,
now that because it's so effective, that's an answer that I I want to share with people. Just give me a buzz or contact me in the ways we'll tell you at the end of the meeting. But I would say don't be too hard on yourself.
right.
I mean, actually treat yourself well and be aware and accept and find a system that works for you
True.
to whether whatever that system is, and people have different systems, but if it's just a passing phase, yes, have a
Mm,
system to work with it, but
yeah.
especially if it's something that's been going on and on, I think it's really makes a difference to know
Mhm.
that to find a place where you can reside and change it.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I wanna say, it's not is that feeling like that, even if it's been going on for a while, doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can and I that's one thing I would say to that person. This can change. Yeah,
Mhm.
you may have to work at it. I experience this work as work, and that's why I call it work. It's
Yeah.
a system, it's a series of techniques, excuse me,
Mhm.
and it works, and it requires that the individual does the work because
Yeah.
our thinking is so, um, I guess the word is so committed to one way of doing it, and then we wanna change like that. Well, let's say it's been 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. It requires a focus and a work.
Yeah.
So whether people wanna work on it or not, that's their choice. But the good news is it works really well, and the good news is get a system that helps you change pretty rapidly,
Yeah.
and then just keep up with it.
True. A continuing process of practicing. And the same thing, I just remember recently I met the electrician and then he talked about the old house have like a four prong and that's the old system. So the same thing with our thought pattern is a powerful like an electrical fire. If a fire it go one way, but that was an old pattern, old thought. And when the electrician had to come in as us, we changed that block, that electrical, the socket, and then things start to change. And the whole different pattern, electrical fire EMF will come in a different way and it become more modern, more efficient, and just simple for our life. So that could be a good metaphor.
The neurons in the brain actually get when they fire together, they wire together, and then the there's something that happens and we have a negative thought about it, that
Yeah.
becomes encased in our brain. But this way we want to go from having a negative, two negatives, to having a negative and a positive
Yeah.
neuron. I think I'm very
Yeah.
excited when you talk about the electrical analogy.
Yeah, and I often recommend like breath work for people to keep breathing out longer than breathing in to keep that exhalation to calm the parasympathetic system. Grounding with barefoot outdoor in a grass would be amazing to keep that coldness from your feet to go up and refresh everything. Forest bathing, like walking in the forest is amazing with the nature and body awareness and sometimes meditation or sitting down to have the awareness about where your body on the chair or what is next to
Yeah,
you, how the room sounds like. Yeah, those are the rhythm and that relate
absolutely.
to sleep cortisol.
So to revisit your question, even
Mhm.
with that, the whole breath thing that you described, breathing in and then allowing the breath to go longer as an exhale, just
Mhm.
doing those calming breaths for a minute, even 30 seconds, but a minute would probably be better. That will calm the whole nervous system down and help the emotion
Mhm.
so that they're not overtaking you. You've now gotten some control over the emotions and the thoughts.
Yeah, that's amazing. And last question regarding to the result of when people go through the system, the program, what would you say the possibility for someone who willing to do the deep work or the freedom look like for the clients on the other side?
Well, I can give you some examples. Myself, I turns out that all through at a certain point in this anxiety and all that, I was bitten
Mm.
by a Lyme tick. So I
That's
bipolar.
a chronic, yeah.
Yeah, I developed the bipolar disease symptoms, and those are
Oh,
really tough. So that can heal. Feeling un. Let's see. I it can change how somebody plays a tennis match. You
mm,
can use this work for achieving the results in a tennis match or another athletic endeavor. Work related, where clients where a person wants more clients in a family relationship situation. In my case, I got divorced and I never thought I hope that it's okay to my ex that he hears this. I thought that I would not be able to speak to him except out of tremendous anger, which never made a lot of sense to me because we had a kid together. But I had no idea how to do that until I applied this work, and now we're friends.
Yeah.
So those are some examples. I'm thinking of others that I gave you that example of the negative thinker who now thinks positively. Well, those are some pretty robust examples.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's a diverse health and wellness and like in finance, in work, in relationship, in health. Those are biggest thing that people are always worried throughout life. And if we can really make things possible, change in a positive direction with empowerment, then we can really change our life and our brain and our mind. Yeah, thanks for bringing the tools and the different perspectives to this world and your gift of healing. So, how can we find you? What offer do you give it to clients now so people can get connected with you after this episode?
I so appreciate your question because, of course, I welcome clients to give me a call. I'd like to offer the people who listen to this free introductory session to this work. You'll see results immediately after, 25 or 30 minutes.
Any LinkedIn, any website, or how people connect with you? So, it's going to be
Uh,
directly.
Thank you. The phone number to reach me is 541-621-4660. I'll repeat that again, 541-621-4660. You can reach me on LinkedIn with my name, and my business name is Shoshana's Healing Arts. And my website is shahealing.com. That's SHA Healing.
And I'll put all of these information in the description of the episode as well. For anyone who missed that, we will have those information for you ready. So you can connect with Shoshana. Well, thank you for being our guest today and such a powerful conversation. And honestly, one that I think so many people need to hear more than once. So feel free to go back and listen to any part you feel like, oh, it stuck out to you. Because what we talked about today isn't about thoughts alone. It's about how those thoughts shape your energy, your body, your relationship, and ultimately the life you are living. And what stood out to me is this: you could be doing all the right things on the outside, eating well, exercising, showing up for your family. That's a majority of my clients' base. But if your internal dialogue is working against you, you you will still feel stuck. And this why this work matters. So if you found yourself relating to any part of the conversation today, feeling overwhelmed, stuck in your head, or just knowing something needs to shift, this is your invitation to start paying attention and start doing something different. Baby step, small thing at once. And Shoshana, thank you for the work you're doing and for sharing your story so openly with us today. It takes vulnerability. And like Brene Brown, vulnerability is a core for us to open our heart to share with one another our gift. And for those listening, I'll make sure all of her information is in the description so you can connect and learn more. As always, take what you learned today, apply one thing, and start there because small shifts done consistently create real change. And I'll see you in the next episode.